My goodness. Hi everyone, this is Duni from Drew Academy, and today is another webinar time for you. In this webinar, we come together and we talk about things we can do to improve our well-being. We're all very busy. We're all dedicated in our different roles to be the best version of who we are. And in the process, we kind of forget about ourselves. We take care of everybody else, and we forget that we need to take care of us. So this period, I know it's not very long, but it's a time where we think about taking care of ourselves, even when we think we don't have time. The other day, I shared with a friend. I was at work and it was quite busy. By the time I finished, I looked at my phone and guess what? I saw that there was I think there were about 50 messages. There were so many, and I was wondering what was going on. So it was from a local group I was a member of, and apparently there had been a broadcast. We were going into lockdown. Many people were panicking because on that day, children had gone to school, and they did say the lockdown was starting the next day. So children are not going to school the next day. So at that point, it was a situation whereby the spaces in school were given to the children of critical workers. So if you were not a critical worker that could not work from home, then your child got a space in school. But if you were even a critical worker and you could potentially work from home, you were encouraged to do that. So here we were, faced with a situation where we had to homeschool, but also still work from home. It was really difficult because many people did not have any plans in place and probably had less than 24 hours to get childcare and everything else that they would normally do. But even with the childcare, it was limited because of the lockdown. So there we were, another surge in the level of overwhelm, in the level of panic, and in the level of stress. Today, I'm going to talk about that because many people have been asking me to share a bit about what I mentioned in my post, I think on one of the social media platforms, where I talked about ways by which you can reduce the overwhelm that you experience when you're having to work from home. I'm talking from the position of a mom, of a working mom with children who are being homeschooled. So I know what it's like. I do understand that it can be a challenge, it can be difficult, and it's something we are in together. But I'd like to encourage you that that situation doesn't have to break you down. That situation doesn't have to weigh you down. And there is a way by which we can make this more enjoyable, less stressful, and more rewarding for you and your loved ones. Okay? Right, without further ado, what I'm going to try to share a slide with you. This slide is just to add a little bit of color to what we're going to be talking about, okay? So nothing didactic, just color. That's all it is. Okay. So I'm hoping you can see on here, we're talking about how to reduce overwhelm working from home. And like I mentioned before, we're all in this together. So if you have any questions, leave them in the chat. I'll be so happy to answer them. But this time around, it's time for us to get down to what we have to do. If you talk about overwhelm, some people would say is when you feel you have so much laid on you, so much going on around you, and sometimes that affects your ability to focus and to get things done. People have described overwhelm in different ways. So there's the physical overwhelm, there's the emotional overwhelm, and there's the psychological overwhelm where you feel your mind is clogged with so many thoughts. There is this very lovely quote from Stephen Covey, and I'd like to share that with you today. It says that the key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. I'm going to say that again. So if you got a pen and a journal, please write that down. It's amazing. The key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. Looking at this, we've got our several roles. Now we've all become teachers. We're all teaching and homeschooling our children, right? We've become tech wizards because we're having to work from home, know how Zoom works, or if you're using Microsoft Teams or whatever software you're using, you're sorting that out for yourself, you're sorting that out for your children. You're having to work through the material that is being sent for homeschooling. You're also sorting through material that is sent for your work, either your project work. Some assessments are even done online these days, and many people are having to work through how that can be possibly done and making it efficient. All these things are things that end up being on our schedule. These are not the things that we should prioritize, okay? These are not the things that, yes, we are all important, but you're not to prioritize all those things. So you have like a big to-do list of maybe 1,000 things in a day. So that's just me exaggerating a little bit. But when people come up with a to-do list, they bring this long list of things. And by the time you look at the list, you're overwhelmed. The key to reducing overwhelm is not to get a to-do list and say, okay, I'm going to start ticking and filling all the things I need to do. You have to be strategic when it comes to planning. You have to be strategic when it comes to looking at what you have to do, okay? If not, before you start, you will be overwhelmed, okay? So the next thing is think about what are those real priorities. Now, Stephen Covey has also kind of described the this quadrant system. I'm sure we're all aware of it. I'm just going to mention it very briefly, but we have the urgent and the important, okay? And we've got the non-urgent and non-important. So there are some things that are urgent and important. Those are the things that make you run around. You probably have delayed on them previously, and somehow those important things now became urgent. Then there are the important things that are non-urgent. Those are the things that you really need to be doing every day to push the needle forward before they become too urgent. They're the things that need consistent input, so consistent effort from you. Then there are the things that are not important but urgent. Sometimes they can be someone else's agenda. And then there are some things that are not important and not urgent. Those are things that we kind of end up going into when we are overwhelmed with the urgent and important things. So those are the checking the text messages on your phone, surfing the internet, going on a binge on Netflix. Those kind of things are the things we kind of run to as temporary relief from the overwhelm we feel. So rather than get ourselves to that position, we need to pick our priorities, plan strategically to schedule those priorities in our calendar. Okay? Awesome. So I'm going to share with you ways by which you can help yourself every day to be the best, most productive person, and also least overwhelmed person working from home. How does that sound? Okay. Right. So there are two things on this slide. I'm going to talk about them one by one. So the first one is make plans the night before. You remember in those good old days when we used to kind of get ready, go to school, drop the children off, then drive to work, and then go to work? Yes. Sometimes I know many of us, we used to plan the night before, but now that we're at home, there's a temptation to just go, oh, right, today is Monday. Okay. All right, children, they probably barely, prepare themselves or even change from their pajamas. They kind of do their work in their pajamas. If not that you're on Zoom calls, you probably would be doing your work in your pajamas. And sometimes some people will have like a lovely top on top and pajama bottoms on the bottom part of themselves. I'm not condemning that in any way. However, it does have an effect on you, which can contribute to overwhelm. But I'll talk about that in a bit. So the making plans the night before goes a long way. It helps you to get organized. It helps you to get a structure into what your day is going to be like. I know that sometimes things happen. The internet might go down. The laptop might break. Things can happen that are beyond your control, but the things that are within your control, you need to try to do them. Sometimes the children would have a schedule. Some schools actually send a schedule ahead of time, so like a week schedule from Monday through Friday. If you've got access to that, have a look at the things that they would need. Would they need some art material or resources? Would they need to do some PE kind of activity? Would they need you to record something while they're performing the activity they've been asked to do? Those are things that if you've got access to a schedule beforehand, you can plan and know where to slot them into your day. That's for the following day. If you haven't got access to that, that's absolutely fine. You can know who is going to have what device. So you have the tablet, you have the laptop. I know I do that quite a bit. So thankfully, I have the children on their different devices, and because of internet safety, I refused to put a webcam. I bought a desktop that did not have a webcam, so I refused to put a webcam on there, and that's what they use for work. However, because they usually have Zoom calls with their teachers, and obviously the teachers have to see them, so at that point they use a tablet or a laptop. So having said that, those kind of things of making sure that the devices that each person is going to use is well in place is very, very useful. The other thing is, have you got your own ducks in a row? Have you got your own project that you're going to present, or your lecture, or your work that you're performing, or the materials you need to put together? Have you got them together for the next day, for maybe the meeting you're having that day? Those kind of things are the things you want to put together and make ready the night before, so that it's just wake up and then you get yourself in the motion. When you make plans the night before, part of the plans is actually to lay out what you're going to wear. Now, I did mention before that there is an effect and really a negative impact of you just getting up, wearing your pajamas and doing your work in a pajama frame of mind as a way of increasing overwhelm. I'll explain in a minute. When you do wear your pajamas or your home clothes and you're not kind of making an effort to change your environment or change your appearance, your brain thinks it's still at home. But then you get to work and there is no particular dynamic change between your home environment and your work environment. There is no transition between your home environment and your work environment. As a result, whatever stresses you've had at home, either getting the children to have some breakfast, and then you get on your Zoom call for your work, you carry that with you. Also, another thing that affects is that you potentially, especially if you've got younger children, they just feel, it's time to play, and when they come with this "it's time to play" attitude and you go, "I'm working," they kind of have mixed messages as well, because you're dressed like you're on Saturday, waking up at 10 a.m. but they want you to play because you're dressed like that, but you're at work because it's a Monday morning. So those kind of things can affect your ability to manage the stresses, ensure that the overwhelm doesn't come onto you, and allow you to transit from one environment to another environment. Okay, so those are some plans you can make the night before. Then the next thing is definitely you need to go to bed. You know the way it is when you go, I'm going to go away. Maybe you have an event at work and they say, would you want to drop by and have a couple of drinks with the guys? And you say something like, no, it's a school night. Yes, that still applies. It still applies. Go to bed early. Get the children to go to bed early. Early to bed, early to rise. And when you go to bed early, you have more than enough energy, strength, and focus when you wake up the next morning. I had a very strange event happen. So usually, I'll give you an example of what happened. It was very funny. The children normally go at a set time to bed. And so when I got a message from the school stating that as a one-off, they were having the Zoom meeting with my child's class about an hour and a half earlier than usual. I mean, that for me was a bit of a strange one, because when we start homeschooling, she would have done like maybe a few of the exercises before the Zoom call starts. But this time around, it was a lot earlier. And oh my goodness, that was amazing. I thought to myself, I was like, wow, I'm going to be talking about getting up early because by going to bed early because of, things like this. But if we had a situation whereby the children were going to bed, say 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, it would have been a lot difficult to get them to go to bed early, for them to get up early for something like this, even though because it was short notice, one, and two, it was a lot earlier than their normal school time or their Zoom call time. So it was quite interesting. But thankfully, because they go to bed early and we wake up early, we're able to get that meeting. Okay, so early to bed. All right then. The next things you need to do is set up your workspace. You remember when I was talking about preparing the night before? I talked about where the clothes you wear. Very important. Whenever I'm not telling you to go and dress your children in their school uniforms, but you as a person going to work, wear something that makes everyone at home with you aware that you're going to work. Don't look like the mom or the dad on a Saturday. Okay? If you need to get to work, you don't put on your like pajama bottoms or jogger bottoms on a t-shirt. You probably would dress a bit differently. If you can do that, it sends that signal to your children, to your people at home, that, oh, I'm busy, I'm on this schedule, and I'm doing my work at this time. That you put on, and same with them, and then you get a space. Have you got a desk? Work at that desk. Working from your bed might affect your ability to sleep later on. Working from somewhere that is not your designated workspace can confuse people at home and also bring a lot of stress for you. So yes, we're working from home. Yes, we don't really have as much space. I mean, technically, many houses don't have extra space. So many people have had to turn their bedrooms to their working area, or their kitchen tables to their working area. Those are the things we need to do, like to pivot, to help us cope with what's going on. However, wherever you have set, let that be your workspace. Let that be a place where people know that once you're sat in that chair, you are working. That you also know that when you're sat in that chair, you're working. And as you sit in that chair, make sure that your environment is tidy. Make sure that there's nothing that is out of place or disorganized, because if you have a disorganized environment, it affects your ability to focus as well. Okay? So your workspace needs to be set up, and even your work presentation, how you show up to work, needs to be set up as well. The next thing we're going to talk about is prioritizing. You remember what Steve Covey said? At this point, you've got a lot of things on your list. You've got a lot of things you probably need to get done and sorted for the day. However, you need to look at what your priorities are. What are those important things in your life? They are the ones that come first. The important things are not just the things that are pressing on you. Someone's email, or I need to reply to this email. Is that important? It might be urgent, but maybe not for you. It might be urgent for the person. So being able to prioritize, putting important tasks first is very important. And if you have got some things that peradventure have become important and urgent, don't worry, don't panic, try to get them done. Okay? So if you've got something that you have been pushing away and pushing off for a while, and for some reason it has moved from just important and non-urgent to important and urgent, try to get them done as quickly as possible, making sure that you have the adequate time to do it, okay? And probably a bit of support as well. But prioritizing intentionally is very important. I'm going to talk about how you're going to work through your priorities, which you have scheduled, okay? Whenever you have a list of things and you've probably scheduled a few of those priorities, yes, you need to work. Yes, you need to put things, you need to go through the list and get them done. But you need to also take time to have regular breaks. Now, this is not, I start work at 8 o'clock, I don't have a break until 12, probably get something for the children to eat. Then I go back to work again and I don't finish until 5 or 6. No, you really don't. That's not regular breaks. Regular breaks is having a break almost every half hour, sometimes a little sooner. Now, you might say, oh my goodness, I haven't got the time. I have to complete this task. I hear you. But this webinar is time for you. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story. I had, when I was in med school, we used to have this practice of overnight reading. And the way it worked, so we were in school all day, and we'll probably end the day at school probably around 5 or 6. And then by the time we were done, we went back to our different places of abode, the hostels, the students' accommodation, and we would have something to eat. Then at about 9 o'clock, we'll head back to the anatomy or the clinical area and the study areas to study overnight. Now, this was a practice, especially when exams were close by. When exams were close at hand, oh my goodness, we had this thing we would study till the following morning. So probably around 6 o'clock the next morning or 5 o'clock. And then probably have an hour's sleep and then wake up. But those were the days when I did not have the very best way of sleeping. My sleep hygiene was rubbish, utter rubbish. I think we even had to kind of pride ourselves. We're having this thing of, oh my goodness, in the last 48 hours I've only slept for 4. You're like, what? We thought that was a way forward. But I'll tell you something that happened. When we woke up, there was a day we're going to have a study. I did not know that the following day our lecturer was going to give a surprise test. So here I was, I had gone and studied, I stayed up all night and was just plowing through. So got back to my hostel, had my shower, had some breakfast, kind of got myself together, put my head on the pillow for a few minutes, and then off I went back to school the following day. That day I got to school, I had the worst headache. It's not as though I had never done this before, but that day, I think it was just one of those days that because I was just too focused on what I wanted to do, I didn't have any breaks at night. Because normally when I have my night study with my colleagues, I sometimes will have a little bit of a break. We'll stand up and go for a walk, come back, have a chat, read again, and then we'll play a game. Things like that. We used to have that. But that night we didn't have that. And I was very useless the next day. We had this test and I did not do well at all. I couldn't remember anything. I was so blank. It was like, my goodness, here I am. At that time, I could tell you what page a particular phrase was, not because I was good at cramming, but because I understood. If we're talking about a particular concept, I'll tell you, oh, it's between pages 722 and 725, and it's on this side of the book. I knew those things, but because I did not have my usual breaks in the night study, I was very non-functional the next day. So yes, I know what it's like to be like a zombie because you haven't got regular breaks. But science have shown us as well that there is the law of recency and primacy. So primacy is remembering the first thing you read or the first thing you learn, and then recency is more the last thing that you've learned. So if, for example, I were to take a book and start reading from page 1, the first page I would remember, and when I get to maybe a point and I want to stop, the last thing I read I'll probably remember. The idea behind having regular breaks, another reason why it's a very good idea, is that when you have regular breaks, you have more first and last sessions that you remember. So you're not just thinking about, oh, what's in between, because most of the time we don't remember what's in between. So we remember the first and the last, and maybe anything else that stood out to us. So when you have regular breaks, you have your first, your last, you have a break, you have another first, another last, then you have another break, you have another first, you have another last. you have a break. And so because you have so many first and lasts, you would remember more concepts than if you just went, I'm going 4 hours into this thing, read the first, you remember the first and you remember the last, but everything in between, except it stands out to you, which either for some reason you might forget. So that's one good thing about having regular breaks. Another thing about having regular breaks is that when you have your breaks, it's an opportunity for you to release any tension you might have gotten into your body. So I'm going to show you something that I do. I technically use this. It's a Pomodoro. And what I do with this is that using the Pomodoro technique, it's just a kitchen timer, but I like the one that's shaped like a tomato because it reminds me of the Pomodoro technique. And the way it works is that you set your timer to 25 minutes. 25 minutes of focused work. And this is something I do with my children. So when they're doing their schoolwork, I'm doing my own work. We set the timer 25 minutes. The moment it rings, that is the time we take a break, and we have a 5-minute break. At that 5-minute break, I get up and have a stretch. I go and grab something to drink. So I drink some water. Sometimes I do a bit of a turn. So this is me turning at the axis of my waist, or sometimes I do jumping jacks. When the weather wasn't particularly very cold, we would run outside into the garden and just have a bit of maybe a quick game of tig. And it was fun because they were having fun. I was having fun. I was enjoying that burst of energy that's just going through my body, running around. I'm taking my mind away from anything that was going there. I'm releasing any tension. And the moment the 5 minutes is coming to an end, we are setting our intention for the next task. We are setting our intention for the next adventure. Now, you remember when we talked about prioritizing, scheduling your task, your priorities. When you have got a priority you need to get settled, you would have that scheduled. And as you schedule it, you schedule your breaks. So you might finish a part of that very important task you should have finished, and then it's time for your break. The moment you finish your break and come back, you are refreshed. There's another 25 minutes of focus, and you get more done in less time than if you just sat down and kept putting your nose to the grinding stone. Okay? One very important thing I would like to advise, make sure you always have hydration, movement, and breathing incorporated into your regular breaks. When you have longer breaks, you can have what we call a shut eye. So you can shut your eye, maybe pull up a hammock like this lady and just have a lie down in the sun. Okay? Right. So, apart from having regular breaks, another thing that can help is making time your best friend. How can you make time your best friend? We all know that we have the same 24 hours. Everybody has the same 24 hours. And to be quite honest, not particularly just 24 hours. We probably have a bit less because we all sleep, or we all should sleep, really. Some people sleep for less and some people sleep for more. I did tell you earlier how we used to talk about our ability to stay awake. 48 hours, I've only slept 4 hours. I think as we got older, we came to the realization that that wasn't a good thing. So now, an average adult should have about 7 hours of sleep. Some people 7 to 8. It depends on you. Everybody is different. So, but in the average usually is about 7 hours. So if that's the case, you think about your wake-up time and your sleeping time, and then you're able to work something out to make sure that you're not sleeping at 12 and having to wake up by 5. Okay, so if you need to wake up by 5, you'll probably be getting to bed by 10. Okay, so having said that, you probably have about you have about 16 hours. Okay, depending on how many hours you sleep for. Okay, 16 to 17 hours. Now, when you have those many hours left, you have got other things you want to do. Making time your friend means that you can use time to help you gain more time. What do I mean by that? When you are doing a task that is not as intense, let's say, for example, you're wanting to prepare dinner, okay? That is the time for you to probably do some other things as well. So if you are preparing dinner, you're chopping things up and stuff like that, you're going to be chopping up the things you're going to cook anyway. You're going to be washing the vegetables anyway. You're going to be putting stuff in the oven anyway. What do you think about that time being your time to do something important that is not urgent? Something important like listening to a book, listening to an information driven or an educational podcast, something that is adding value to your life or to your business or to your knowledge. That's the time to gain those competencies. That's the time to have that chat with your children. And I'll just tell you a little trick. Well, it's not really a trick, but it's something that we practice in my home. And what I do is, because we plan the day before and actually plan for the week, especially when it comes to meals, we decide on what we're going to eat. So the next day, let's say, for example, we decided we're going to have we're going to have spaghetti bolognese. When I'm preparing the spaghetti bolognese, I don't do it alone. I remember, what do the children have at school? They have a dinner lady or a dinner person. They've got the cook. They've got, people around to help. They are not usually involved in the cooking. And they just turn up, eat, and go away. So right now, this is my time to teach these children a little bit of home economics and a little bit of food and nutrition and a little bit of social interaction. So what do? Age-appropriate tasks. You get the spaghetti, you get the pot. Let's get some water. You chop the onions. I delegate the different tasks. And as I'm talking about the nutritional value. We're having a discussion, maybe not just about the food, but about other things as well. We can talk about the tasks that they've done so far and how engaging it was, what they found challenging, and we're all doing our tasks. My son is very interested at been breaking up the spaghetti. He loves breaking them up. So, because sometimes we don't like it very long, so kind of at least break it into two. So he just goes snap, 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 and that's his favorite. And then at that point, he just goes, I think it's time for us to have a little chit chat. It has become so natural and normal that when it's time for us to make our meal, that's when we have a chit chat. So what are you going to do? How are you going to recruit people to make that time your best friend? That time is the time you're going to be doing about 3 things at the same time. So yes, you're preparing a meal, but you're preparing a meal, you're educating your children, you're bonding with them, you're increasing their socialization skills, you're increasing their culinary skills. We all are human beings, we all have to eat. And because we all have to eat, we all have to know how to prepare the meals we eat. So if this is an opportunity to get them to do that, which at school, they don't get the opportunity to do, I think that is an amazing thing. Okay? Another way that you can make time your best friend is when you have allocated something, give a little bit of a buffer. What do I mean by that? If you have a task that this task usually, I probably need about 30 minutes to complete. give yourself an extra 5 or 10 minutes. Because when you give yourself another 5 or 10 minutes, it helps to reduce the pressure on you. And secondly, it also helps you kind of account for any distractions. If, for example, there's some uneventful things, I mean, you probably don't have control over everything. If for some reason there has been a power outage, your internet went down, or the computer just crashed, or something happened that you really don't have control over, then you have at least some buffer time that will reduce the overwhelm you would feel. Because when you have like amounts of buffer time, and if you don't use that buffer time, that's adding to your own time, the time for you, the time to recharge, the time to hydrate yourself, the time to move, okay? These are things you can do to help yourself. I hope this is making sense. At this point, I would like to ask for any questions that you have, okay? If you have any questions about this, just let me know. Okay, so having said that, today we have talked about reducing overwhelm as we work from home. We've talked about how we can use time to our advantage, how we can prepare even in this very difficult time where home and work are not really separable. We are working from home, we are schooling from home, we are doing home from home. There's no proper demarcation between one place and the other, and so sometimes we can get overwhelmed. So but this time around, we can create a kind of transition between one area of our lives, our home life and our work life and our school life, and still let them blend into each other in such a beautiful way. This is Duni from Duro Academy, and next week, you know that we do this webinar every week. It's a time for you webinar. It is free. Bring your friends, invite people. It's every Tuesday at 9 p.m. GMT, which corresponds to 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.